That should make everything go pretty quickly. So we should catch up pretty quickly now. I will bring back our main stream. Go back to DLive, make sure that it's running. We'll see what happens. All right, looks like everything's back up and running. So we will carry on. There we go. Now everybody should see everything. We should be good to go, right? Everybody good? Streaming again, and everybody has sound, right? In the chat room, everything's good? Okay. So we were talking about the supply chain of lumber. And I had my doubts because these 6 companies, they want to make money. And the only way they make money is by shipping lumber. And that goes to Home Depot and Lowe's and all that. And nobody likes inflation because when inflation happens, nobody buys anything. Money doesn't mean anything anymore. So what we saw was a published video. It was put out by an outfit called Ken's Carpentry. And it was a YouTube, and it was fairly recent. And it was a video that showed enormous quantities of brand new lumber still in the wrapping, sitting. And it wasn't in lumber yards. The exact location of the video is not mentioned, but it could be near Lyndonville, Vermont. Well, that's not where the lumber's made. In the video, and it might be Ken himself, but we're not sure, explains that a train depot has been transformed into a makeshift lumber yard. He said train loads of lumber coming out of Canada are offloaded here and then transported by tractor trailer to lumber yards across the country. And I would say there's probably 1 million board feet here that I can see in this picture. He said, I'm astounded by how much lumber is here, and I'm wondering why there is such a problem at the lumber yards. This particular picture, the lumber stretches, I'm going to say 3/8 of a mile. And the video has more than 300,000 views and over 1,300 comments in just a short time. One person said, gee, could it be to keep the price gouging and profits up? This whole excuse that it's due to COVID is bullshit and it has to stop. Close quote. Another one. It's too bad that there are no investigative reporters left in the world. This lumber story needs to be investigated and exposed. And another comment. This is what happens when a few companies own the entire market. And this person makes a very interesting point. Listen closely. There is no lumber shortage. It's just Weyerhaeuser and GP wanting to drive up profits. So could the lumber industry, controlled by just a few players, be pulling the playbook straight out of the diamond industry to limit supply to drive up prices? Well, a lot of people don't know the story about Weyerhaeuser. Who in the world controls Weyerhaeuser? Well, if you read the Birth Trilogy, you would know something about a man that you probably don't even remember unless you read the book. And his name is William Ruckelshaus. Now, William Ruckelshaus goes all the way back to the Nixon administration. William Ruckelshaus was the head of the very first opening, the grand poobah of the EPA under Richard Nixon. Yeah. And under that, of course, he used his federal power to get control over the forests and the water under the aquifers in the western United States, the mines, and other resources. Now, of course, Nixon pulled him out of the EPA and put him into the Department of Justice as the Attorney General, and then asked him to basically drop the case against him for obstruction of justice. William Ruckelshaus decided to quit instead, and he went back into private industry. Where did he go? He went to Weyerhaeuser, of course. After he gained control of all of the forests west of the Mississippi, he went to work for Weyerhaeuser. And the story goes on and on. He goes not only through the Nixon administration, but he also helped Ford, and then he helped Reagan, and then he helped Bush, and then he helped Clinton, and then he helped Obama. In fact, when Obama was a young senator that nobody knew, he had never held a job in his life. Only a few people in Chicago even knew his name. He wasn't a national name, hadn't done anything, hadn't sponsored any legislation. He was a nobody, absolute nobody. Except one man decided to endorse Obama as president. Yep, gave him one of the biggest, most powerful endorsements he could have. And that was William Ruckelshaus. William Ruckelshaus left all of these industries and took control of a company called BFI. You know, the trash people. BFI. If you have a trash can emptied in the United States of America, chances are you're paying a little bit to BFI. And that's William Ruckelshaus. William Ruckelshaus controls, probably, the bulk of the lumber in the United States. Or at least his organization does. And that is what's going on. The administration of Virtual Joe and his criminal gang wants to choke America to death. And one of the surefirest ways to do this is to hit the middle class. Now, as you know, the middle class has been targeted for a couple centuries by the global syndicate. They don't like the middle class. They don't want the middle class. They wiped it out during the Civil War. They wiped it out during 1929. They wiped it out during the 30 Years' War, the war that lasted from 1915 to 1945. You call it World War I and World War II, but actually it's the same war with the same players. It's just everybody just reloaded, relocked, and went right back at it with bigger and badder weapons. Everybody made money. Everybody made money. The point is that the middle class has been the enemy of the global syndicate. And they are the enemy of Virtual Joe and his criminal gang. So what better way to smash the Trump economy than to bring out a made-for-TV virus and tell everybody they're going to die if they get sick, which didn't happen. Didn't happen. Very few people, less than 25,000 people, died from COVID-19. Lots of people caught COVID. We've been catching COVID for 100 years. More than 100 years. But COVID-19, now that's a little different breed of it, but only about 25,000 people actually died from that. Dying with it and dying of it are two completely different things. And it only hit a very narrow age bracket anyway. So that made-for-TV virus was designed to smash the Trump economy and to get President Trump out of office, which it was successful in doing. And they were able to establish their business model of cheat by mail. And that business model had worked very well for them in the selection of 2020 and also in Georgia during this special election. They knocked out 2 senators and balanced up the Senate. But I don't know if they're going to be able to run that business model anymore because the states are on to their game. And now they're going to start requiring a photo ID to go along with voting. And let's not forget what's going on in Arizona right now. Now, we don't have a report for you. I wish I did. I've tried to find out as much as I could, but no information's coming out yet. There's a lot of speculation. But we do know that the cyber ninjas are tooled up for this, and they know what they're doing. What they're looking for, of course, are the counterfeit ballots from Ballots R Us. We know what happened. We know that China counterfeited millions and millions of ballots. Some came out of Canada, some came out of Mexico, but the bulk of them came out of China. They were shipped to regional warehouses. There were 15 states that signed the agreement that they were going to withhold their electors until the national popular vote was known. Of course, it was early on in the night. Everyone figured that wasn't going to happen. Trump was going to end up somewhere in the mid 70 million. There was no way they're going to win the popular vote. So they targeted 6 states, as I predicted they would do in April of 2020. So November of 2020 shows up, and the 6 states, as predicted, stopped their count in the middle of the night, kicked all the observers out, called up Ballots R Us. They knew how many ballots they needed. They were shipped in, opened up, dropped into the machines, and run. And those counterfeit ballots that were pre-printed in China, all filled out, all signed, all ready to go, never folded, just brought in and run through the machines. But there was one thing missing, one thing they didn't count on. On the ballots that these states used, because these were all Republican states, they had watermarks on the paper. They had watermarks on the paper that the state used to print their ballots. Unfortunately, the ballots printed in China did not have the watermark. So what the cyber ninjas are doing is they're using the infrared backlighting to look for the watermark. And they're separating out the paper ballots that don't have that watermark. Now, I don't know what the number's going to come out like, but if cheat by mail and Ballots R Us coordinated well enough in Arizona, we're probably talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 240 to 260,000 votes. Well, Trump only won or lost by 11,000 votes in Arizona. It's a very close number. Like I said, they didn't go crazy with it. They did go crazy with it because they had to add 240-something thousand votes in order to get to ahead 11,000 votes. It's a model that's been working for them in the past, going all the way back to the 2016 election, but they used it in small numbers, and they used it for Senate races and judges and attorneys general and stuff like that, and that's how it worked. But the business model works very well, and they had to have the White House. They'd already smashed the Trump economy, which was part of the leverage that allowed them to push the cheat by mail system. And of course, you had close to $1 billion. Actually, it was close to $3 billion. $2 billion from Black Lives Matter, and about $400,000 from Facebook, and $600,000 from other sources like Soros and Obama's OFA and stuff like that. They pumped tons of money in there. And what they did was they set up drop boxes in heavy Democrat areas, and they ballot harvested. They let people submit their ballots in an unofficial way, unsecured, without traceability, and they picked them up and brought them to the counting area. Of course, that wasn't enough. It didn't get enough that way. They had to have the counterfeit ballots. And, when you print 1.8 million and you get 2.5 million ballots back, that should be a clue. That should be a clue. Your printer only made 1.8 million ballots and mailed them out, official ballots. But you get 2.5 million ballots back? That's like 700,000 ballots. Hello, we don't know where they came from, and they don't have the watermark. So cyber ninjas are segregating those votes. They're sequestering them, putting them aside, and they're calling them counterfeit ballots. I don't know what the number is, but I suspect it's somewhere between 240 and 260. We'll be right back. We'll send TFR to their 3-minute break. But that's what's going on. Now, what effect does holding back the lumber from Home Depot and Lowe's and 84 Lumber and all these other hardware stores that are selling lumber to builders and remodelers and people building their own homes? Well, what it does, it smashes the American dream. When you think of the American dream, what is it that you symbolize with it, right? Yes, of course, it could be apple pie, it could be baseball, of course, those things. But it's home, right? It's owning a home. That's the American dream. To stop renting, to stop living in an apartment, stop living in a double-wide trailer. It's to own your own home, right? That's where people enter the middle class, is to be homeowners. And so what Virtual Joe and his criminal gang have done is they've set aside the lumber. They've managed to have the global syndicate convinced that what we need to do is just stop selling lumber. Yeah, you've already cut it. You've already cut it to size. You've already kiln dried it. You've already wrapped it and labeled it and put it on pallets. It's ready to go. But you're going to sit it in these holding yards all over the country. And you're not going to let it go to Lowe's and Home Depot where they can normally price it. You're going to starve out the middle class by not allowing them to build a home. That's how you crush the American dream. That's why that story is so important. That's why we're counting on the cyber ninjas to do their job. We have to have these criminals exposed once and for all. Let's see if that will work. We should be. I don't know why pause was hit on my DLive, but it must have been. Is everybody streaming okay on DLive? I think everybody's hearing it okay. I just had mine paused for some reason, so I can see people on DLive. So, all right, we're good. We'll bring Truth Frequency Radio listeners back in just a moment. So that brings me to my next story. And the next story I call serfdom. Now, I don't mean like surfing, like surfing a wave. Although I could give you a good story about that. Not that I ever rode a big wave or did anything fancy on a surfboard. I used to surf because I was kind of addicted to the beach and the ocean and the whole thing. But there's a kind of philosophy that came with it. And it's quite fascinating. Because, people reach a point in their lives, and it doesn't matter whether you're a teenager or you're retired or at retirement age. But we reach a point where we feel like the whole world is pulling against us, that some kind of negative energy is working on us. Hang on, let me bring TFR back in. There'll be a little bit of intro music.
Steve Hawking, and I am proud to be a Wookiee.
Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
So I was telling a little surfing story, and I likened it to this philosophy. When you're surfing, when you're out there on the water and you're sitting on your board, you're not really paddling, you're just kind of waiting. You're waiting for a wave. Now you think, if you sit on the sand a lot and you watch the waves, you go, well, what are you talking about? Look at the waves keep coming. No, that's not what it's like. When you're surfing, you need the wave you can ride. Okay, not the wave that just comes over and crashes and disappears. You want the wave that you can ride, that will come up a little ways and maybe curl a little bit, and you can ride it from left to right or right to left, however it's breaking on the beach, and you can get 10 or 15 or 20-second ride out of it. That's why you go out surfing. You don't get up so you can just stand up and then sit back down again. And so how do you know when a good wave is coming? Well, there's all kinds of guys that count them. They say, okay, there's 3 lulls and then there's a good wave. Then there's 7 lulls and there's good. That's crap. That never works. The only way to tell if a good wave is coming is by the undertow. The undertow, that's the water that's being pulled back out to sea. away from the shore. It kind of builds in behind the wave and builds it up and builds the volume behind it that will carry it all the way to the sand and give you that good ride. So that's the way life is. When life starts throwing the undertow at you, it starts harshing your gig. It starts that dark energy, that thing that's pulling you down, pulling you back, like you feel you're going to drown unless you just strain your chin to the top and barely keep your head above the waves. That's when the good waves come in. Now you can hunker over and cover your head and you could curse God and say, wow, what a terrible undertow. But I can tell you, if you just turn around and put your knees up on the board and start paddling, you're going to have the ride of your life. Something good is coming. When you feel that energy sucking away from your average reality, a good wave is coming. Don't curse God. Don't get down on yourself. Don't be depressed. Don't say, woe is me, I'm in the undertow. Rejoice, because the energy is building for the wave, and you're going to get to ride it. Well, what does this have to do with serfdom? Well, nothing really, but the concept of government is that the people grant to a small group of individuals the ability to establish and maintain controls over them, okay? That's government. We don't want to micromanage everything. We want to do our thing. We want to run our bakery. We want to cut hair. We want to paint houses. We want to serve, spaghetti or pizza. We want to raise our kids. We don't want to have to take care of personally, making sure that we have electricity, or making sure that the sewer systems run, or making sure that, the water is filtered and that it's healthy to drink. If we put a filter on it and strip the chlorine that they put on it to keep it bug-free to get to our house. We want our trash picked up. We want our electricity to work, right? But you don't want to each person micromanage that. No. So what you do is you elect people to take care of that, okay? You elect people to work on the utility board, to be a health inspector, to run the water treatment plant and the waste treatment plant. You do that so that these individuals can maintain these systems for us. Now, the inherent flaw in such a concept is that any government will invariably and continually expand upon its controls and what it perceives as its power, resulting in the ever-diminishing freedom of the very people who granted them the power in the first place, right? That's serfdom. Now, when I was young, I took history along with everybody else, and we were taught that the feudal system of the Middle Ages consisted of serfs tilling or turning over or farming small plots of land that belonged to the king or the lord. The serfs didn't own the land. They just worked it. The serfs lived in kind of a meager life of bare subsistence and were subject to the tyranny of the king or lord, whose men would ride into their village periodically and take most of the few coins the serfs had earned by their toil. Now, the lesson was meant to teach us that I should be grateful that in the modern world, I live in a state of freedom from tyranny, and that as an adult, I would pay that level of tax that would be described as fair, right? Everybody talks about paying your fair share, right? The fair share of taxes. Whether you're rich, whether you're middle class or whatever, you pay your fair share of taxes. But after I got out of school, I learned that in the actual feudal system, the original one in the Middle Ages, some land was owned by the noblemen and some by common men. The commoners typically farmed their own land, while the noblemen parceled out their land to farmers in trade for a portion of the product of their labors. Now, as part of the bargain, of course, the noblemen would pay for or raise an army of professional soldiers to protect both the farms and, of course, the farmers. Now, significantly, unlike today, no farmer was required to defend the land himself, as it was not his. There was no exact standard as to what the nobleman would charge a farmer under this agreement, but the general standard was 1 day's labor in 10. 1 day's labor in 10. We call that these days 10%. Well, that was not an amount imposed or regulated by any government. It wasn't a law. It was just a custom. The nobleman would charge as much as he wished. However, if he raised that rate significantly, he would find that the farmers would leave. They would go someplace else. They'd move to another nobleman's farm where they got a better deal. And so there was a little bit of competition on it, but they didn't want to starve themselves out, so they kind of settled at 10%. That way, they didn't have mass migration of farmers year after year, and it wasn't like a price war for people who knew how to work the land. The 10% was, in essence, a rate that evolved over time through a free market. It's what people were willing to bear. Now, today, of course, if most countries levied an income tax of a mere 10%, there would be dancing in the streets, no doubt about it. And the days of one simple, straightforward tax, well, they're long gone. The global syndicate has seen to that. Today, the average person may be expected to pay property tax, even if he's a renter. On your vehicle, you're going to pay tax, or your motorcycle, you're going to pay tax. You're going to pay sales tax, capital gains tax, value-added tax, inheritance tax, tax, death tax, and so on, right? About 40 to 50% of everything you make is paid out in taxes. It's horrendous. I don't see how anybody stands it. The laundry list of taxes is so long and is so complex that it is no longer possible to actually really compute what the total tax is on every individual. You just can't do it. I think you maybe could for a day, but over time, the taxes on utilities, the taxes on insurance, the taxes on your cell phone, the taxes on your, not just your income, but also on the property that you hold. Taxes on inventory that's left on your shelves at the end of the year. Taxes on your capacity. If you have crops in the field or oil in the ground or gold in the mine, okay? And to this, we add the dreaded, horrible tax, which we call inflation. In the U.S., for example, the Federal Reserve has, over the last 100 years, devalued the dollar in 100 years by a stunning 98%. That's a hefty tax indeed. And guess what? The U.S. is not the only country that's done this. Only 50 years ago, the average man might work a 40-hour week to support a wife who remained at home raising the children. He often had a mortgage on his home, but might have it paid off in 10 years. He might pay cash for nearly everything else, including his car. And he and his family owned or consumed basically net. So you didn't stay in debt your whole life. In contrast, in the Middle Ages, the cost of goods might remain the same throughout the entire lifetime of an individual. But in light of that, what I've just said, the 10% was paid by the serfs. It's beginning to look very good indeed, isn't it? Isn't it? If you could keep 90% of everything you make. But the great majority of people in the first world, that would be us, right? The great majority of the people in the first world are likely to say What can you do? What can you do? It's the same all over the world or worse. So you might as well get used to it, right? Unless you want to go totally off grid and farm your own stuff and milk your own cows and slaughter your own pigs. And I guarantee you're going to die by 50 because that kind of life will kill you. It'll kill you. There are many governmental and economic systems out there, and many are quite a bit more serf-friendly than those in the major countries like the U.S. and like Europe. There are countries such as the British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, the Bahamas. Guess what? No income tax. There's no structure to figure out how to audit what you make. They don't care how much you make. It doesn't matter how much you make. It only matters how much you spend. That's it. That's it. And some of these countries, they don't have property tax. They don't have sales tax, capital gains tax, value-added tax, inheritance tax. They don't have anything like that. How is this possible? How is this possible? Because government is as small as it needs to be, or as big as it needs to be. The OECD countries state that it is largely accomplished through money laundering, but that is not the case. In fact, low-tax jurisdictions are known to have some of the most stringent banking laws in the world. So how's it done? How can it be done? The success of these jurisdictions is actually very simple. Most of them are small. They have small populations and therefore need only a small government. Yet each jurisdiction can accomplish large numbers of investors from overseas because they can make as much money as they want to. This results in a very high level of income per capita. Panama is a perfect example. Panama has a very high level of income per capita. They have some of the world's largest banks. But unlike large countries, the money that is deposited or invested there is overseas money, so it's not captive. Investors can transfer it out in a millisecond if it needs to do so. So even if the politicians are no better than those in large countries, and generally they are of the same, let's just call it the same club of corruption, they're aware that, like the noblemen of old, if they attempt to impose taxation, their business is going to dry up very quickly. If they start taxing the money that's sitting in those banks all around them, that money will disappear in one breath. In fact, these free market dictates that the jurisdictions keep on their toes and keep trying to outdo their competitors by being more investment friendly, that's exactly why they're prospering. Therefore, the politicians in these countries, who might be only too happy to promise entitlements to their constituents and then tax them to the hilt in order to pay for the entitlements, they're kept restrained by their own system. Now, are there downsides to living in a low-tax jurisdiction? Well, yes, maybe. Low tax, if you mean low tax, means low revenue, but that doesn't necessarily mean that. Most of them are small, but they require a very high standard of living in order to attract these big dollar investors. They must import virtually all goods needed by the residents. This means a higher cost of all goods as compared to the cost in a country that produces such goods. However, the wage level is also higher, which tends to balance out the equation. But there are also upsides. Those who move to such a jurisdiction find that after the first year, when the basics such as cars and televisions and all that have been paid for, all further income that has been saved from taxation is beginning to get deposited in the bank. In the bank. When you have disposable income, what do? Do you put it in a cigar box? Well, yeah, some people do, but most people just leave it in the bank. They call it savings. And at some point, the deposit level becomes great enough that investment becomes advisable. And as low-tax jurisdictions tend to be naturally prosperous, there is generally no limit to the opportunities for investment within the jurisdiction. There is a further benefit to living in a low-tax jurisdiction that tends to become apparent over time. Any government that depends on major investments from overseas parties must, of necessity, be non-intrusive, non-invasive. Such a government stays out of the people's business. It eschews electronic monitoring and most certainly is not given to SWAT teams crashing down doors for imagined wrongdoing. Benjamin Franklin famously said, "Nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes," and he was correct. But the level of tax can vary greatly from one country to the next. And just as important, the level of government intervention into the affairs of its citizenry varies considerably. In a country where the tax level is low, or in a state where the tax level is low, the quality of life is generally correspondingly high. Look at Texas. Look at Florida. Look at Nevada. Look at these states that don't have income taxes. Look at Tennessee. 1,000 years ago, noblemen from time to time became overly confident in their ability to keep the serfs on the farmland, and they demanded taxes beyond the customary 1 day's labor in 10. And when they did, the serfs of old often voted with their feet, and they simply moved. And today, that's exactly what we see happening. California just lost a congressional seat, first time in history. New York just lost a congressional seat, first time in history. Guess who won? Florida and Texas. I rest my case. I rest my case. That's exactly what's happening. It doesn't mean that all serfs can just pick up and leave. But it means that, at least in this country for now, we're in control of our own destiny. We don't have to live under these oppressive conditions. I'm a little upset that they're starving us out of the lumber, though. That really kind of pisses me off. Somebody needs to go raid these lumber storage yards and start trucking it to Lowe's and Home Depot, and let's get the price back down. We got our intelligent caller on the line from New York. We got about 7 minutes left in this hour. What's on your mind, sir?
Hi.
How you doing?
Hold on one moment. 2 seconds. Let me just get to the phone off mute.
Okay.
So how are you doing? Two things. Cyber ninjas. I started hearing about them this week or whatever. Who are they?
Yeah.
I'm very curious. I like ninjas. So, I'm curious as to what a cyber ninja is. And then the other thing is with the whole cop that killed Floyd and all that, what do you think is going to be happening with all, obviously it looks like he's going to have a mistrial now, right? Because of those jurors?
Yeah, I think that, I don't know if it'll be a mistrial, but he definitely has grounds for an appeal. And he'll win. He'll win the appeal because of what Mad Max did and because the judge did not sequester the jurors from the beginning. And I think also a case can be made that Chauvin was not judged by a jury of his peers. And that's grounds for an appeal right there. So he has 3 good grounds for an appeal. I don't like to see it because I think the guy should be in jail. I think he should be convicted for what he did. I'm sick and tired of police brutality. I think we need to make examples out of some of these cops that are doing this, that think they're all that, and it doesn't matter if they have a personal relationship or a bone to pick or they're mad or whatever. There were other cops around that could have pulled him off. They all should go to jail as far as I'm concerned.
Yep. Well, yeah, I've had to deal with some corrupt cops myself, and that's I'm 100% against corrupt cops. I'm for the cops that are good, obviously, but just like anything, whatever rules you're supposed to be enforcing or following, that's why it should be more severe for people like cops and judges and lawmakers and all that. Whoever it is that's supposed to be upholding or making the laws, if they get in trouble, I mean, is that supposed to be how it's supposed to be?
Well,
They're supposed to get more severe punishment because they're obviously knowing the law for a fact. Like,
I don't think it's
or
the police.
supposed to anyways.
I don't think it's the policeman's fault because the policemen are just tax collectors for the guys that write the laws. They're just the enforcers. All they're doing is collecting.
Well, they shouldn't.
They're collecting the speed taxes. They're collecting the law taxes. They're filling up the courts with people who are going to pay high fines and keep the prisons full. But that being said, I think there are good cops trying to do a good job, but they're not well liked by the city. The city likes the people who bust heads, who make high arrests, who make a lot of speeding traffic fines. Even though the traffic is flowing nicely, they want them to feed upon the public because they need the money, and that's what the cops do.
What do you call it? When it comes to the cops and that, though, like, if they're supposed to be enforcing the law, they should know the law. So, like, there shouldn't be this whole cops not knowing how things work and all that. But obviously they do that on purpose of this way. Because cops did know, then they wouldn't be doing most likely what they're doing. But because they're ignorant of what's really going on, they can, one, feign ignorance, and two, they can, what do you call it, just, basically the people that are in control, they're using the cops. And the cops don't see that because they get power for being a cop. And then also they get, they get a lot of perks for being a cop. Obviously there's the bad cops that sit there and they'll take extra stuff from their raids and stuff like that. So,
well, I've said this
just
before.
Like being, what do you call it?
We've
like
had,
liking almost.
We've had this conversation before, and I have said before that cities, which are the ones that use police, not the counties that use sheriffs, but the cities that hire police, they're hiring people who have killed another human being already in their life. And when you hire a person that's killed another human being as a policeman, there's a threshold there they've already passed. And you just put a uniform on them. And if you start talking about civil rights with a person like that, you're going to have some major, major dental work to take care of.
Right.
I'm with you. I mean, they don't know anything about civil rights. They don't know about free speech. They don't know about trespassing. They don't know about search and seizure. They don't know about unreasonable, search and seizure and using physical force to win an argument. That they don't know any of that. The best thing you can do, they
do know right from wrong. It's supposed to be inherent, and that's what the whole Constitution's about. So they should know better, as human beings, not be doing stuff like that to people.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
The people that do that, the cops that do that, they're definitely psychopaths. The ones that do that, not the ones that are doing it out of actual fear or something. They really think they're doing the right thing. I'm talking about the ones that obviously enjoy it. Like I said, that's the thing about stuff like positions like cops and that, and businessmen and that, they do draw the psychopaths. Now, there's some people that are like ENTJs, the personality types, that people might consider them to be like psychos, but they're actually equipped to handle a lot of pressure and power and prestige. And the reason why is because they have their feelings as their fourth function, cognitive function. So they're not really about feeling. They're about doing the most logical, effective, efficient thing. So they can come across very cold or very psychotic in a way with the way that they handle situations or whatever. But the point is that they're not actually that way. But then there's other people out there that they're just drunk on power when they're a cop or when they're a lawyer or when they have some type of power over somebody, some type of position or something.
Yeah, and
so, like, if we put in all of this is why I'm about the personality stuff, because if we put in the personality stuff, we could better understand who's being, like, just themselves in a way, you know what I mean? There's nothing wrong, so you just gotta be careful with it, and who's, like, really out of line. Like, it'd be able to give you a better indication on what's going on.
I'm just going to send TFR on their 3-minute break while we continue our conversation. And so let's talk a little bit about the Cyber Ninjas, because I think that's a kind of a quirky company name, kind of cartoonish. But these guys are really good. These guys know what they're doing, and I know what they're going after. These guys were hired because of their expertise in auditing elections. And what they're doing is they are using the watermark that Arizona put in their paper, when they created their mail-out ballots, they put a watermark on them. The trouble is, I think they got about 250,000 ballots back that didn't have the watermark on them. And I think that's what the cyber ninjas are trying to do, is find those ballots that don't have
the watermarks, like
it's
the watermarks,
ultraviolet.
real quick, just like the stuff that they put on the dollar bills.
Yeah, it's an ultraviolet ink that they stamp the paper with before they print it, and it shows up when you shine an ultraviolet light on it and has a serial number on it. And these counterfeit ballots that are printed in China and shipped over here, they don't have that mark on them. And Cyber Ninja's that's why the Global Syndicate's spending $130,000 an hour to stop the Arizona recount. They sent 130 attorneys from Washington, D.C. at the contract rate of $1,000 an
illegal
hour.
Immigrants too.
What's that?
They sent over They sent over a whole bunch of illegal immigrants straight from the border.
Yeah.
They were sending them over to Arizona. That's what I remember hearing.
Right. And they just
I think that was to help mess with to help mess things up, when, at night when they're gone, maybe trying to mess up the boxes, ballots, or whatever that they counted that day, whatever the case may be, try to mess with people. Because have you heard of the whole gang stalking in that? Target individual stuff, of course.
I have been to Phoenix a couple times. And I went to Phoenix one time. I went to a convention for electric vehicles. And what really blew my mind is I went downtown on a Wednesday at noon, which the street should have been jammed with cars. There should have been people coming out of all those bank buildings and going to Hooters and wherever around there having lunch, right? I'm telling you, I stood in the middle of a 4-lane street downtown, and there was not a car to be seen anywhere. None parked, none driving. The lights changed, and it was like a ghost town, like a freaking ghost town. And I asked somebody, what's going on? And they said, what do you mean what's going on? I said, dude, this is Phoenix. It's supposed to be like 1 million people at work today in town. This was well before the made-for-TV virus. It should have been booming. He said, well, the problem is there are a lot of kidnappings going on in our town. And so people don't go out on the street because they end up getting kidnapped and held for ransom. And so nobody goes out on the streets.
Hold on 1 second real quick. Let me just... So...
Hold on a second while we bring TFR back in.
Okay.
A little bit of music here. All right, welcome back, Truth Frequency Radio listeners. You're back with us. We are streaming live on 6 different forms of media out there. And we have a caller on the line, and we're discussing the cyber ninjas in Arizona and what that might mean for the future of our country. So your thoughts. Continue.
Well, we were talking about the Arizona and how it was strange and how I guess people were disappearing. They were being kidnapped or whatever.
Yeah.
And we're making reference to the whole illegal immigrants that were being brought in and how they do a lot of the dirty work for, it's not just them. It's, gangs and stuff. Whoever's around that doesn't have a lot of money, the, corporations or whatever, whoever it is that control the stuff. They give money, like BLM and that, Antifa, those types of corporations. They were definitely being funding. It's all the same thing. It's all the same people, just different facades, different organizations and names and masks that they hide behind. All the same people, though. But, so the cyber ninjas and all that.
Yeah, there's something else to be, I just want to bring this up. I had some friends tell me this, and they're not kids. They're in their 30s. They went to Mexico to party, several of them, and they answered an ad for a party that was supposed to be like an underground party. And so you could go, but they collected your cell phones at the door. So because they didn't want it going out on social media, they didn't want the party crash and stuff like that. So they went. There was like 6 couples. And one of them was a girl who's Venezuelan and she speaks Spanish. And she overheard people at the party, because there was a lot of people there and music was loud and everything, but she could overhear them at the party, that they had targeted her to be kidnapped. They were going to traffic her. And so she told her boyfriend. Her boyfriend told a couple of the others. 4 of them decided to leave the party, but the rest stayed. I'm just telling you, people, be smart out there, okay? This is going on. This is going on. And Arizona is one of the bad places. Mexico, you're taking your life in your own hands if you're traveling to another country. And if you ever call a cab, make sure you go to a hotel and have the concierge call the cab for you. Don't flag a cab down at the curb because you think you're all savvy and everything. You're going to end up with a sore ass and a quarter in your hand. You need to be smart about this stuff. So the cyber ninjas, in my opinion, could, and I have nothing to base this on but just conjecture, but they could discover enough counterfeit ballots to overturn, or to, should I say, set right the Arizona election. And if they do Arizona, I have a feeling the other 5 states will audit as well, and they will all go for Trump. And if that happens, the reign of Virtual Joe and his criminal gang is over.
What do you call it? Trump did say that Arizona would be the first one, and he also stated that New York would wind up flipping over in his favor. Not that it would be like the votes, but that after whatever, that New York would be for Trump without a doubt. And with everyone leaving New York City, there won't be nearly as much power in New York, just like California. And because they're going to keep leaving and all that. I mean, it's only, and no one's going to be voting for Democrats or whatever. So I think he was right about those 2 things. He said that. He said that Arizona would be the first one to flip over for the elections, and that New York would wind up turning completely red.
Well, New York's got its problems because the city controls all the federal power for the state. And it's true, the city has a high concentration of population, but the rest of New York is all conservative. Upstate New York and outside of New York is all conservative.
Why don't they just, if they were to, make New York City, what's the reason why they don't make New York City into its own?
They're thinking about that. They're actually thinking about subdividing the state. And the northern or the upstate New York is thinking about forming their own state called, North New York. And Texas is considering dividing into 5 states. And California is considering dividing into 3 states. They're so sick and tired of Los Angeles running the federal relationship for the entire state of California.
Here's the thing, though. When it comes to that, and people moving to Texas and Florida and stuff, leaving New York and Cali, we're playing into the aren't people playing into the hands of kind of like running the hills instead of standing around and fighting, so to speak. So my point is, what happens when people move to Florida or whatever, and what happens when they make the new states, and then these people from the New York City or Los Angeles, they just go and move over to the other places too, and then they just, it seems like they're killing off the conservatives and all the good people. That's what they've been doing for years, and now we're figuring this out, that they've been killing, okay, so let me put it this way. Every 4 years, whatever, they get new people in for politics, right? And so many people are going to be highly intelligent or whatever. They're going to start being aware. They're going to become activists and stuff. And for all we know, for years, they've been killing off a whole bunch of people, purposely targeting those that were actually political. And since the political realm is not that big of a realm and most people don't care about it, people wouldn't connect or think about it. It'd be actually pretty easy to do. So it's just an opinion, because back in World War II, they killed 60 million people over in Russia, Russians, and it was them themselves doing it.
Yeah, that's
so,
right.
I mean, you
Well,
got
they starved
history
them out.
repeats itself, and it rhymes and all that.
Yeah, they starved them out. That's exactly what happened. They just
And here's the thing, though.
cut off
I
the
mean,
food
right
supply.
What? Okay. No, go continue. Sorry, my bad.
Well, they cut off the food supply
They
and
starved them
starved
out?
them out. Yeah.
Well, isn't that what they're doing? Haven't they been destroying the food supply over here in California and dumping a whole bunch of milk and everything in the last couple of years, or last year or two?
Yes, they have. And now they're trying to
So,
undo
destroying the.
all the cattle, getting rid of all the cattle, and they want us to stop eating burgers.
Well, Texas just had that freeze that helped to kill a lot of animals and destroy a lot of stuff.
True.
That Texas freeze.
Well, that wasn't engineered, but
So
they didn't have any reason to
yeah.
cut off the electricity. They could have survived that easy.
That caused a lot more problems because of the water and stuff of that nature. Because wasn't the water? Yeah, the water was directly connected to electricity, right? That's the reason why people didn't have water, because they didn't have electricity.
Or gas. You're right.
So that you could say they were a direct correlation, because there was a lot of talk about how they were purposely messing with things with electric and that.
Yeah,
energy.
and I think Virtual Joe and his band of criminals, I think, said that they were going to prevent Texas from drawing energy from outside sources, and that's one of the reasons why they went.
Yet Texas helps to produce energy for other sources, doesn't it? For other states.
Yes.
Like I remember somebody saying that they were in Texas and like they get their energy from like California, but California or whatever gets their energy from Texas, so they have to pay more because their energy in Texas is going to California, then to them in Texas. So it's leaving Texas, going out to California, and then coming back to Texas, and they're having to pay extra for that.
Yeah.
Even though it's technically coming from Texas.
Yeah.
Originally.
Right. Exactly. And there used to be a company called Enron that made a lot of money off that interstate transfer. Of course, all those guys went to jail, but then they got freed up because the Supreme Court stepped in and overturned everything.
So a lot of these things, like, okay, so that whole electrical setup, how do we not know that somebody didn't just purposely do all that to purposely mess with to make money, or like they criminally did like this? Okay, so let's say they set it all up. I don't know. So there's no reason for me to actually talk about it because I don't know that much about cyber stuff or whatever and how it was all set up. So I just had a theory, but it doesn't matter. But the point is just that people are waking up to all the criminality and how evil the world can really be or whatever, but it's really not that many people. I think it's just a matter of time before this catches up with them real fast, and they're not going to be able to. I don't know. When do you think the next? You know how COVID-19 was like a wake-up call, how they locked everyone down, how people are realizing that things aren't what they thought they were. When do you think the next big wake-up is, where it's like people are going to realize that they're going to have to actually fight these people, like they're going to have to actually use force? Because it's right around the corner. I mean, BLM and Antifa has definitely helped to provoke.
Yeah, I think what has to happen.
Strong reaction.
What has to happen is you have to have a move toward justice, and that means that the top 30, I call them the dirty 30, they have to be arrested. They have to be arrested. The money laundering, the insider trading, the murdering, the lying, the bribery, all that has to be brought to justice.
Have you heard of the Second Independence?
No.
That Trump made? You didn't hear about that?
No.
It was last year. And it's basically, you can go look it up, try to look it up on BitChute or whatever. But yeah, I've seen a video on it. And if it's real, it was basically like a very good quick history lesson. It was supposed to be a 10-page. It's 10 pages. And it's like a history lesson from Civil War, the end of the Civil War, all of America, all the way up until the present, and it goes through detail of the Illuminati and the elites or whatever, whoever, the families or whatever, and what they've been doing, about the real wars, about the real stuff, and how they've been purposely scamming everybody and
what's
the wars
the link?
And everything.
What's the link?
So, and at the end of it, it basically states that as long as the elites or whatever leave society and they allow people to thrive, and they just go to themselves, then they'll keep their heads. If not, then there will be war and they'll die in the end.
What's the link?
So they're trying to basically what?
What's the link?
I don't have it was on BitChute. I don't have the actual wait. Did I save it?
What's
I
it
might have
called?
saved it.
The Second Independence?
I go on BitChute all the time and I randomly look up videos, but sometimes the people whatever I don't necessarily pay attention to because a lot of times it's like they'll have one good video and that's it, and then the rest is like stuff that's not really good, like information or whatever.
Unlike here, all our videos are good.
Yeah. I can always count on listening to your stuff. And that's actually, honestly, I've been doing my research into this stuff like 12 years now. So you're definitely someone that I find as a solid source, and that's why I find it kind of weird and strange that you didn't know about this independence thing, because I figured you would definitely. Let me just look it up on Google real quick.
I got a feeling this July 4th is going to be unique. It's going to be unique. It's not going to be a tragic ghost town like during the made-for-TV virus, the year of that. People are fed up with that. That's not going to fly anymore. By the way,
declaration. Hold on. Yeah.
I have a good response.
Yeah.
If somebody says, you want to put that mask on, you want to put it up over your nose and all that, you could just say, we've had enough time now to figure out that doesn't work. So it's time for you to go away. And if anybody asks you about the vaccination, just tell them I'm going to wait a year. We've got a good sampling size now. 150, 160 million people have had it. So in a year's time, we should be able to see if it's going to have widespread effect, good or bad, on those people. And I'll make up my mind in a year. That'll take the pressure off.
I'm looking right now for... I'm just letting you know. I'm still looking for it.
It's all right. I know you're mobile, so So I also need to let everyone know that we're still working on the server. It's been 3 weeks. I am talking with the server company, which is iPower. They're the biggest in the country. We've been with them for almost 20 years. This is the first time that we've changed servers. The old servers got old, and we had to re-image them onto new servers. We made our backup files just as we're supposed to. The server was re-imaged. We tried the backup. It failed. And so we have been moving files manually using the file manager, which is like using snail mail. I can't even use FTP because there's no FTP client. There's nothing set up. That's what we've been trying to do. So we've been moving files one by one. Now all the birth audio files are now on the server. You can't access them yet because X Squared Radio is still not working. If you put in X Squared Radio or America Free Radio, you're going to get a 505 error. And that's because the servers are not up yet. Hopefully, and I was saying this just today or yesterday, a couple of years ago, you used to be able to pick up the phone and call iPower tech support. Didn't matter if it was 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. You would get a live person, and that person was knowledgeable, and they would walk you through and fix your problem. One phone call, one and done, just like that. And we have had technical issues over the years because I'm not a cyber ninja, and so I had to learn as I go in order to virtually manage my own server. But a couple of years ago, that changed. iPower outsourced all of its tech support, all of it, on chat and by phone, to India. And they know nothing, absolutely nothing. In 2 years, I have never had a single technical issue solved by technical support with iPower because they outsourced everything to India and they don't know anything. So I've solved all the issues myself over the last 2 years just because I'm a good problem solver. But I can't solve this. So if I can't resolve this in the next 7 days, by next Sunday, for the first time ever since 2005, which goes a long way, we are going to change hosting companies. I know it's a big change, but we have to do it. We have to do it because we're in business. And with X Squared Radio, America Free Radio, and EV Fleet being down, it means we're not in business. No one knows anything about us, and our market share is disappearing half every hour. And as you know, in a few hours, you're going to be down to zero. So that's where we are. And I apologize. I wish there was something I can do about it, but I can't. It is one of those unsolvable problems. And, you know, I'm sorry for iPower. I really am. They were once a great powerhouse, a great server company, and now they totally suck wind. So if you found that link, we'll go with it, and I'll share it right now with everybody. And don't forget, next week we're going to be streaming. We're going to add a stream to our presence called Foxhole. Foxhole, a warm, comfortable place for people to with like minds to come together, and we're happy to be added to it. All right, did you find the link?
All right. So I found I went to Google. Of course, it wasn't there. So I gave him a chance, though. You know, I'm a nice guy, so I like to give people a chance. And Google didn't have it, so I went on to DuckDuckGo.com. Go to DuckDuckGo.com and type in Trump Second Declaration of Independence, and then you'll have an article or a site will come up, 4 Winds, and it has. This is just one way to find it. Proof of its existence or whatever, and has a picture of it, and then it goes over. It says the first one is the inevitable Civil War destroyed America's economy, ripped families apart, and cast a questionable shadow on the future of a promising nation. America was in trouble financially and needed a massive infusion of capital to get back to its feet. 2, a cabal of nation-building venture capitalists from Europe agreed to finance America's recovery, but demanded an active role in government to ensure their investment. In 1871, mired in debt, Congress worked out a partnership. In exchange for boundless financial support, the foreign investors handled America's administrative needs. And it continues on from there. And it's 3, 4, 5, and there's supposed to be 10 pages, I think.
Okay.
It goes all the way to, I think, 30. I think it goes to 30. Hold on.
Okay, I can dig that. I got to get on to my next subject. I'll find that link and we'll share it out there. I appreciate your phone calls always. Great intelligence.
Yep.
You have a great week.
Thank you.
All right, Earth Explorers, let's move on to my next story because it covers ballots are us in Georgia. Now, CD Media has examined additional receipts found in trash receptacles outside of DeKalb County election facilities after Virtual Joe was selected. The document found in the original article shows Democrat-controlled county board 25 million voter registration applications for a population of less than 1 million. And I have the picture of this in my notes. Normally you would be able to access my notes and look at this picture yourself, but iPower server is down, so iPower cannot share that with you if you click on the link, and so I'm not going to provide it for you at this time, but I will at a later date. Other receipts have been found from counties of populations of the same order of magnitude, and the order, procedure, and discount codes used are the same. Now, CD Media called DeKalb County Director of Voter Registration Elections, Erica Hamilton, and asked her if the November 11th, 2020 receipt for $20 million was valid. And she refused to answer and gave a Gmail address for a PR person to answer for her. Now, I think that's absolutely ridiculous to have a Gmail address for someone who's official working for the government. The county should field its own media inquiries, not leftist-controlled private media spin operations. So to solve the problem, there's been an open records filing request with Erica Hamilton, and she has 3 days to respond. So the questions raised were this: why did DeKalb County order 25 million voter registration applications prior to the January 5th senatorial runoff, which decided control of American government? Question number 2. Why does DeKalb County use a private firm to interact with the public? And question number 3, if I can find it here. Wow, question number 3 is not there. Well, anyway, I've got the receipts. Receipt number 10762, November 2nd, 2020, 12:55 p.m. from an online store. Yeah. And 10747, November 10th, 2020 at 6:40 p.m. from an online store. And 10757, November 12th, 2020 at 8:36 a.m. from an online store. They were ordering voter registrations. I call this Ballots R Us. Now, they've been reporting on information found in dumpsters outside of the Georgia election facilities, and these were highly interesting. On the east side of Metro Atlanta is DeKalb County, with a population significantly less than 1 million, about 680,000. It looks like 25 million voter registration applications, which is crazy. And DeKalb was suspiciously slow on the evening of the Georgia senatorial runoff election on January 5th of this year. So that was very strange to see. Now, something's going on which we call the Arizona effect. I call it the Arizona effect. And that is, the entire planet is about to be closed with the reality it's going to be hard to accept. And the reason is because the global media empire has brainwashed us into thinking that Virtual Joe and his band of criminals is actually the legitimate president of the country. It's been 100 days, and I think you could see that we were originally right, that this was going to be a total catastrophe. So everybody's going to get dosed with this, and I don't know what the reaction's going to be. I'm thinking that it's going to be a huge exhale of relief, like you've been wanting to go to the bathroom for several days and have been holding it, and now you're finally, the door is open, the urinal is free or whatever, and you're able to go. I think it's going to be a huge relief for everyone. But I could be wrong. I'm hoping that I'm right. But I could be wrong. We'll let TFR go to their break right now, and I'll continue with this. The reality is this, and I know you're listening to this program because this is where the truth is. We're the voice of the revolution. This is where the truth freaks hang out. The reality is that President Trump won the election in a massive landslide. That's the truth. That is the truth. And Americans are going to be facing that fact that Virtual Joe and his band of criminals are not the administration. I know it's been 100 embarrassing days plus, But the world will get over it. The world will get over it. No bombs have gone off. Nobody's been invaded. There's been no mass die-off of people unless the vaccine turns out not to be what we think it should be. But after this is accepted by the masses that Trump dominated the election, it wasn't even close, the question is going to be, what now? We already know what's going on now, right? We know that lumber is being hidden from us. We know money is being spent like a drunken sailor. We know that everyone is lying from top to bottom. We know that Big Boss has put his band of criminals in charge of every agency, department, bureau, and administration. And they're raping the place, stealing every dime they can get a hold of. Now, you and I know the election was a massive coup. We know that. As do most people who can generate enough cerebral firepower to, light a candle. More than's required to breathe, autonomically. But the intellectually void, and we do see them out there, you can spot them a mile away because they're wearing masks. They vehemently call it a conspiracy theory, but it is not. Even they are going to be forced to deal with this reality. It is going to happen. Arizona's going to start it. Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, maybe New York, I don't know. But they're all going to fall. It's all going to fall. You cannot hold a fraud like this forever. In Arizona, an audit is going to prove that Ballots R Us stuffed the ballots with at least, I would say, 240 to 260,000 ballots. You could tell because Antifa and BLM are ramping up, and their attention has been on the fentanyl Floyd trial, attempting to distract Americans by creating outrage at the verdict. But I caution you, listen to this program, don't fall for these distractions. Nothing with respect to our country and republic is more important than the selection of 2020. From the nanosecond it's understood the people are back in control, our culture will immediately snap back to normal. It will happen. It will happen. Now, I know you're going to hear a lot of screaming and you're going to hear a lot of complaining, but it's just that. It's just noise. When America gets back to work, the world will come with us. We're bringing TFR back in now.
In this final moment, I'm still chasing the truth. I want an explanation why I can't stay here forever in my youth. And if I press on, will you wait? Will you wait for me forever? Or would it be wrong to ask you to come with? Tell me, will you wait?
And I'm with you, Steve, in the chat room. He says, been praying for truth to win out over this charade. I agree with you. Everyone agrees with you. Everyone feels what you feel, Steve. In fact, I like my DLive people so much. I've finally fixed what was going on with the sync problem there. Let's go ahead and give away some lemons. I just like doing this. It's time to do it. So we're going to distribute about 104 lemons. We'll see how it goes. It'll randomly select 5 lucky listeners out there, and we'll see how it goes. I don't have any pick on this. This is all done by DLive. And by the way, the blockchain crypto system that DLive uses is what is modeling for the Foxhole. So there's going to be a similar system in Foxhole. So it's a great place for people to hang out. Let's see who won here. We have a Steve Y62. See, what a great compliment. I promise I had nothing to do with this. He gets 39.4 lemons. Michael 1973.23. Mailer Damon 16.9. Vonnie Kinsey 13.6. And Bouquet Game, is that what it is? Bouquet Gami. Okay, 11.6. Congratulations. Thank you for being loyal listeners to America Free Radio. You are now richer for that. That goes into your crypto bank there at DLive, and it turns into real money. So one day you'll qualify for the Mercedes-Benz. Yes, and Delina is exactly right. Hopefully this will wake up those that are still in denial. Let's see. Anil NZA. I don't know how to pronounce that. Nothing can stop what will be proven to be true. The 2020 election is rife in fraud. I don't even call it the 2020 election. I call it the 2020 selection. Because when Ballots RS goes in there and wipes out your vote, it stops being an election. It starts being a selection. But what happens now? After the people are back in control, after Trump comes back in and his administration starts a year late, but it starts, and his cabinet comes back in, the first thing that's going to happen, I think, is at least the dirty 30 and maybe more. The criminals have got to go to jail. Justice has to be administered. The global warming hoax is going to go away. All this Green New Deal and all this lumber being hidden from us and all these exorbitant tactics being used to smash the middle class, they're all going to go away. Academia begins to expel the Marxist cancer that's made a joke of institutions trusted to actually educate. The teachers' unions will probably be dissolved as a national security threat. Individual states will set up their own collective bargaining systems for their education system. All of it's run by the counties anyway. Antifa and BLM intimidation stops, and the participants go back to their parents' house and take that much-needed shower that they haven't had in a long time. Why? Because OFA is going to stop paying them, because the people that run OFA, the Organization for Action, they're going to be put into prison, okay, for treason. So once the money stops, BLM and Antifa will go home, and our country goes back to normal like it was. This is going to be not keep America great. This is going to be America first. America first, the America first agenda. By the way, this came in the mail for me because I ordered it. That's why it wasn't a surprise to me. But this is going to get sewed onto my motorcycle jacket. Are you ready? Oh, yeah, look at that. United States Space Force. That's getting sewn on my motorcycle jacket. That's pretty cool, isn't it? I think it's pretty cool. We got this far with Republicans fighting us tooth and nail. We got this far with Democrats lying and voting in lockstep like a third world country. And what's it going to be like after the first audit is complete? Well, I think other radio stations are going to have to follow our lead. They're going to be forced to tell their idiot rhino talk show host to stop saying that Virtual Joe won the election, because the pressure and the heat from pissed off listeners is going to be too great. State Republican legislatures are going to feel whips cracking on their asses like they've never felt before. I heard that. We could form another party. We could. But that's not the way our country's set up. You don't want to be like Europe. You don't want to have 10 or 11 parties out there fighting for 6 or 7%, 8% of the vote. Nobody gets 50%, and then the top two, fight it out in some crazy bar fight. You don't want that, because then all you get is argument. You have to work inside the party system. And I don't think it's possible at this time to work inside the Democrat Party. Maybe a day will come after these old fogies and millionaires die off or are expelled from Congress or stop running for Congress or, God only knows, defeated in an election. Wow, that would be a novel thing, wouldn't it? Or maybe we can limit their terms by doing the Convention of States, and then this congressional dynasty and senatorial dynasty ends once and for all. But don't hold your breath. The Convention of States is a very tough thing to do because you have the global syndicate fighting you on a very local level, and it's hard to do. Even in the state of North Carolina, where the Congress signed the resolution, we still have to wait for the governor to sign it, and the governor's not going to do that because he's a corrupt, bribed Democrat, Roy Cooper. And I don't know how he got in there, but he got in there, and he beat out Hudson, and I'm sorry, but what can you do? I just don't think the Convention of States can be done in a timely fashion. I want it to be. I help start the movement. I work on it all the time, but I don't think it's going to happen. What has to happen is we've got to work inside the Republican Party. That means that you need to run for office. You need to run against that corrupt congressman or corrupt senator in your state and get them out of office. Let's work inside our own party. Okay? These audits, they were never supposed to happen. They were never supposed to happen. We're not even supposed to need these. The coup was supposed to be wrapped up, put to bed, done. But instead, President Trump has been in control this entire time, behind the scenes. No, he hasn't been president, but he is a very, very formidable leader when it comes to putting good people into office in the Republican Party. He's the one raising the money. He's the one making the party move forward. Liz Cheney's sick and tired of him raising all the money. She's trying to raise the money, but she can't. And she's been forbidden from using his likeness or his name to do so. Marxist globalists who thought they'd be able to take over have been met with a sea of booby traps in every state, every county, preventing them from seizing control. Oh, we've heard the big news. We've heard the big executive orders, and we see the bills that are being passed by the Democrat Congress, but they're going nowhere. Even if Virtual Joe is signing them as executive orders, which he doesn't even know what he's signing, and I doubt they even have his signature on them. They probably have his wife's signature on them because he can't control his hands. He doesn't know what he's signing. He doesn't know what he's doing. He barely can read a teleprompter. But none of that's happening. None of it's going into effect. Yes, the pipeline was stopped, but that's because the people that are building the pipeline are big Biden supporters. Yes, the border wall was shut down, but that's because the contractors, most of them, are insiders. They're all fascists tied in with the government. Now, there's an example that I have for you. You know the name Perkins Coie, right? Perkins Coie is the corrupt law firm that created what was called the dossier. I call it the filthy rag that was used to get the fake FISA warrants so that the FBI and the CIA could spy on President Trump. Oh yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, if you'd have brought false information into my court and I found out about it, I'd haul you back into my court and say you need to show cause while I don't put you in jail right now for contempt of court for presenting false documents to a court. Did that ever happen? No. Why? Because Roberts is the one that selected all of those FISA judges. They were all corrupt, all of them, the entire system. Perkins Coie, a connected judge who took over for Judge Corey, who recused himself out of the clear blue, told the Democrats if they put up $1 million bond, he'd pause the audit. Well, they couldn't do it. They didn't have the money. They didn't want to risk it. So instead, they sent 130 federal attorneys down there, federal, I say, from Washington, D.C., at the average rate of $1,000 an hour. So do the math. That's right, $130,000 an hour. $130,000 an hour they're spending to try to stop the cyber ninjas. Meanwhile, President Trump has pretty much taken over the GOP from behind the scenes, and now Cheney she's got about 25 days to go, and she's going to be gone. The GOP's fundraising, it's in the crapper. The money is with Trump. The money is with Trump. Let me give an example. Last week, Club 45 was started the month after President Trump was elected. And what happened was they decided to have General Flynn come in and speak to them as a keynote speaker, and they had a few other speakers. And they decided to put the tickets online. This was last week. So they put the tickets up on Eventbrite or whatever it was. They had 900 tickets. The 900 tickets sold in less than 13 minutes. And then they started getting emails. Hey, what's going on? I'm trying to buy tickets. I can't get in. So the organizers said, gee, that's terrible. Or I guess there were a couple hundred people. And so they sold them tickets too. All the VIP seats and almost 1,100 tickets sold out in less than 20 minutes. They raised all the money they were supposed to raise, plus they had donors come there and give more money. General Flynn came and spoke, and it was a rousing speech, and several other speakers as well. That's what I'm talking about. The energy is with Trump. The energy is with the Patriots. The energy is not with BLM and Antifa. The energy is not with Virtual Joe. The energy's with Trump. Okay? But instead of them listening to what Trump said at CPAC, the GOP establishment responded the same way CNN did, either by derisively mocking the speech or calling it a threat to democracy. Plenty of establishment media covered the speech as the loud, angry whining of a sore loser. And then, when the first quarter's fundraising results were announced, guess what? All hell broke loose. Oh yeah. All hell broke loose. The rhinos rubbed their eyes in shock as they looked at the numbers. It turns out that not only did the conservative base hear Trump's March 9th call for them to bypass the GOP and to send their money straight to him, but they also sent him enough to dominate the fundraising quarter by a very wide margin. But how much did Trump dominate the year's first fundraising quarter now that he's an outsider? Well, Trump's Save America Political Action Committee, it raised a cool $23 million more than the RNC and the DNC combined. And Trump didn't put out that March 9th statement until the quarter was half over. Imagine the numbers Trump is going to pull in during the next quarter. At this rate, understand what this means, Earth Explorers. Trump has diverted a tremendous amount of the stream of money coming from the base to the GOP. And that money is now going to Trump himself, which of course gives Trump an immense amount of clout. Every single candidate that Trump is endorsing is winning. I wonder if this audit is happening because of the dirt and the information the Trump team has on everybody. I'm certain the election coup was allowed to happen. I'm not sure that things went as planned, though. I want to have high confidence that we'd get everything we needed to put these people away, but you never know. They're so slimy. They're so used to being in trouble with the law. They know how to get out of this stuff. My confidence continues to be high. And the fact that we're in the middle of these audits with more on the way is something you should take a moment to appreciate. It could have been shut down, but it wasn't. Those on the fence or know the election was stolen but lack the confidence or knowledge to debate or argue, you're going to be able to point to legitimate audit results pretty soon. I would say 2 weeks, maybe 4 at the outside, maybe the end of May at the outside. And what it's going to show is Trump did not lose Arizona by 11,000 votes, but he probably won it by at least 250 to 280,000 votes. Now you think about the people that you know or have seen on social media or on the news that say that Virtual Joe won and that Trump lost or is a sore loser. I want you to think about the clowns using the word president before the word Joe, as if that is remotely believable. All of them will have no choice but to acknowledge Trump as the president, not like the first time when he won in 2016 and they never accepted him. This is going to be not just certified by the state legislature, it's going to be certified by free and independent audits. All of those fake ballots are going to be found, and they're going to be thrown out. And when Trump is sworn back into office, ask yourself if they don't agree, and then they admit it's okay to steal an election. I mean, do you see how they're in an impossible checkmate? They cannot win. If they fight against the audit, what do they have to hide? If they let the audit happen, Virtual Joe's out. The 100 days of misery will go down in history as the biggest fraud in history of any country. The automatic response from the drones on our side is, but the media will say, you think by now they'd understand. Trump won. Trump won in a massive landslide while the media was against him, the same as 2016. I can tell you this, a country cannot allow the person the country overwhelmingly voted for to be sitting on the outside. And the person that they voted against by a huge margin, and I think you can see that if you look at the people that watched what was supposed to be the State of the Union show with Virtual Joe, and who watched President Trump's State of the Union a year ago, the difference is like 75-1. It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable, the difference in viewership. I mean, we have an audience about the size of what Virtual Joe had the other night. We do. Here at TalkStream Live. That's embarrassing for the State of the Union show. It should draw more than that. I think that's how the election went too. I think that's an indicator. That's how it works. I know. Dr. Mem Jing says that almost sounds too good. I know, but this is the power of resonation. I don't think there are 75 million supporters of Trump in America. I think there are 100 million supporters of Trump in America. I don't think there's 100 million supporters outside America. I think there are close to 1 billion. Close to 1 billion supporters for President Trump outside the United States. So you add those two together, that's 1,100,000,000 people that support President Trump. It is going to happen. You cannot take an election using ballots are us and fraud. It just cannot be done. You'll get away with it for 100 days or so, but then it's going to catch up with you, and you're going to be sore embarrassed. Let's see here. I got another story. I want to read the cave story, but I also want to let you know there's something we wrote in the Arc of Millions of Years. I think it was in Volume 2. We talked about anciently the solar system because of how it orbits, undulates, goes up and down through the galactic plane as it goes through the precession of the equinoxes. That at some time about 25,000 years ago, Earth passed through what we call the Black Axiom. And we made the claim that the solar system passed through this rather quickly, but it was rather dense. And slow revolving bodies got half coated with this black dust, like iron dust. And of course, quick rotating bodies, did not got coated more uniformly, more kind of sprayed with it around the entire planet. Like Earth rotates pretty quickly, once every 24 hours. The moon rotates once every 28 days, so it got half coated, and the far side of the moon is actually less coated than the side that faces us. The albedo of the side that faces us is 10, and the albedo of the moon on the far side is 60, which means 10% of the energy of the sun that strikes the moon on our side reflects back out to space, and on the other side, 60% of the energy that's received by the sun is reflected back out into space. Now there seems to be proof for our assertion in the arc of millions of years that Earth passes through, periodically, this debris field. Radioactive dust deep beneath the ocean waves suggests that Earth is moving through a massive cloud left behind by an exploded star. Continuously for the past 33,000 years, space has been seeding Earth with a rare isotope of iron forged in supernovas. It is not the first time the isotope known as iron-60 has dusted our planet, but it does contribute to a growing body of evidence that such dusting is ongoing. We are still moving through an interstellar cloud of dust that could have originated from a supernova millions of years ago. Iron-60 has been the focus of several studies over the years. It has a half-life of 2.6 million years, which means it's darn stable. It completes its decay after about 15 million years or so. So any samples found here on Earth must have been deposited from somewhere else, since there's no way any iron-60 could have survived from the formation of the planet 4.6 billion years ago. It would have all been decayed by now. And deposits have been found. Nuclear physicist Anton Wallner of the Australian National University stated seabed deposits date back to 2.6 million and 6 million years ago, suggesting that debris from supernova had rained down on our planet at these times. But there's more recent evidence of this stardust. A lot more recent. It has been found in the Antarctic snow. According to the evidence, it has to have fallen in the last 20 years. And a few more years ago, scientists announced that iron-60 had been detected in the space around Earth, measured over a 17-year period by NASA's space-based and Advanced Composition Explorer. In 2020, Wallner found more of this stuff in 5 samples of deep-sea sediments from 2 locations dating back to, guess what, 33,000 years ago. And the amount of the iron-60 in the samples are pretty consistent over the entire time period. But this finding actually poses more questions than it answers. Earth, you see, is currently moving through a region called a local interstellar cloud. It's made up of gas, dust, and of course plasma. If this cloud was created by exploding stars, then it's reasonable to expect that the dusting of Earth... We'll send TFR on its break for 3 minutes. It's reasonable to expect that it's dusting Earth with a very faint rain of iron-60. This is what the Antarctic detection suggested, and this is what Wallner and his team were seeking to validate by examining the ocean sediments. But if the local interstellar cloud is the source of this iron-60, and we're not sure that it is, there should have been a sharp increase when the solar system entered the cloud, which, according to the team's data, is likely to have occurred within the last 33,000 years. At the very least, the oldest samples should have been significantly lower levels of iron-60, and yet it didn't. It's possible. The researchers note in their paper that the local interstellar cloud and the supernova debris are coincident rather than one structure, with the debris remaining in the interstellar medium from supernova that took place millions of years ago. That would suggest that the local interstellar cloud is not a faint supernova remnant, but maybe something more near our neighborhood. There are recent papers that suggest iron-60 trapped in the dust particles might bounce around in the interstellar medium. We don't really have enough perspective to say that for sure. It answers this question, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. So the iron-60 could originate from an even older supernova explosions, and what we measure is some kind of echo. That it could be the 12,068-year cycle of regular novas, not supernovas, but regular novas, I can't remember his name now. He does a very good job of presenting, though. The best way to find out, the researchers note, is to look for more iron-60 covering the gap between 40,000 years ago and around 1 million years ago. If the iron-60 abundance grows greater farther back in time, that would suggest ancient supernova. However, a greater abundance more recently would suggest that the local interstellar cloud is the source of the iron-60. This research has been published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, so it has been peer-reviewed, and we appreciate that. The black axiom, as we call it, is this very dense cloud of iron dust. And as you know, the Earth goes through the equinoxes about every 26,000 years. It can be maybe 30,000 years. It depends on a lot of things, but it's still a relatively tight window there. And we theorize that when the solar system passed through this, that all of the asteroids that are in the belt, all of the slow-rotating planets got half-coated with this dark material. And that's what we see as the dark side of the moon. We also see these iron pellets kind of consolidated like iron raindrops, I guess, that pelted the Earth across the Carolinas and out across the Atlantic Ocean. In fact, if you look at the lakes in South Carolina and North Carolina, they actually look like ancient impact that scarred the ground and was left to fill in with water. So we'll bring TFR in again, Truth Frequency. We're entering our third and final hour tonight. Here we go. All right, before we start this hour, I want to let you know next Saturday we have my monthly webinar on manifestation masterclasses coming up. It's on at noon on Saturday, so it's good for anybody that lives in the United States or Europe. And we've had people from South Africa and Australia and all that attend the class too. It starts next Saturday at noon Eastern Time. It runs for 2 Saturdays. It'll run about 2.5 hours next Saturday and about an hour and a half the following Saturday, maybe a little longer if there's discussion. You'll get a free copy of the book, Remembering the Future, and the audio version, and it is a live webinar, so we interact during the class. It is based on the book, Remembering the Future, but it is a great presentation. I'm getting high marks on it. And so we're going to hold the class in May, and we're going to hold the class in June. And then in July, on the 10th of July, we're going to have an alumni reunion. So all those students that have taken the class for the last year are going to RSVP are going to come in and tell us how they've been doing with the lessons that they've learned, with the methods of journaling that we gave them and the Manifestation Masterclass, and we'll get an update as to how they're all doing. Maybe some of them have already made their million by now. You never know. So it is a great class. I highly recommend it. All you have to do is go to my website, brooksagnew.blog or brooksagnew.com. Click on the webinars link. It's right there. I promise it's the best $47 you can spend on yourself. If you have already done everything you have to, because your whole life has been have to, and you're ready to start doing what you want to do, or you want to reconnect with what you want to do, all you have to do is attend the class. Just attend the class. I promise you won't be disappointed. If you're disappointed in the class, I will give you your money back. But I promise you, you're going to enjoy it. You're going to enjoy it. So go to my website, brooksagnew.com, click on the webinars link, and we'll fix you right up. Okay? All right, let's continue on here. Where's the beef? Well, I got news for you. Here's the beef. Criticism of what? You want me to read more from the book? I like doing it, but I wonder if everybody likes it. I mean, I'll just do it by a show of hands. I'd love to read from the books. It's fine, but I just want to share a couple more stories with you, and then we'll see. If I get a good response in the chat room, then we'll read another chapter. Criticism of the beef industry. Wow, this is just insane. I just had to cook a steak this afternoon just because of this. Anyway, this last week, this whole beef thing about beef flatulence and methane and all that, it was thrust to the forefront of the U.S. political stage when the cooking brand Epicurious announced that it would no longer publish new beef-based recipes as part of an effort to encourage more what's called sustainable cooking. I guess that means potatoes or zucchini or some other kind of squash. I mean, that's sustainable. So you'd rather eat your vegetables alive than do what has been done for the last 100,000 years on this planet, which is eat meat. Humans are much more healthy when they eat meat. In fact, your immune system and everything works much better if your diet is about 80% meat. I don't mean pork, but I mean meat. A target of environmentalists have attacked like you cannot believe on the negative effects on the global environment cattle farming has. It's been, the eco-activists are just unbelievable here. A relatively small but growing body of research suggests that certain types of cattle farming, namely those in which cows are raised on pastures for their whole lives as opposed to in feedlots, may actually have a carbon negative effect on the environment by helping to sequester greenhouse gases under well-managed grasslands. Yeah, imagine that. The vast majority of beef produced in the U.S. is sourced in feedlots. You know what a feedlot is? Where they don't let the cattle roam. They feed them grain. And grain is unnatural to cattle. When it does, it bulks them up really fast and gets them ready for slaughter. But it trashes their intestines. It just does. Fills them with virulent E. coli and all that. And typically what happens in order to clean up the beef, what they do is they fatten the beef on feedlots, and then they turn them out to pasture for about 3 weeks and let them eat grass. And what the grass does is it cleans out their system of all that virulent E. coli, Escherichia coli, and then they slaughter the beef. And this is not good for the environment for a lot of reasons. So The environmentalists have criticized those systems as ecologically ruinous due to their heavy carbon footprint, citing in part their dependence on chemically fertilized cattle feed and the copious amounts of methane that cows emit in the form of, well, farts. The Washington Post, meanwhile, claimed recently that science says beef should be on the chopping block. Yep, due to beef's significant role in greenhouse gas emissions. And by the way, I should tell you, I'm a scientist, and I totally rely on data for my conclusions. And I got to tell you, every single experiment that I've ever done, ever read, ever heard about that's peer-reviewed and holds up to scrutiny, methane is not a greenhouse gas. Now, I hate to tell you, methane is not a greenhouse gas, because methane, when biological methane is emitted into the atmosphere, there are two things that happen. First, the sun comes up. Yep, it does every day, pretty much. The sun comes up, and when ultraviolet light strikes biological methane, it breaks down into water and CO2. That is it. And the water, of course, is about as pure as it can get. And the CO2 is completely oxidized carbon, which can be used by plants, which is the grass and the trees and everything around a farm. Yeah. So it becomes carbon neutral. Let me say that again. Methane is not a greenhouse gas. It doesn't float up in the atmosphere and trap heat in the atmosphere. By the time it floats up in the atmosphere, it's gone. It is changed into carbon dioxide and water. And the Atlantic deemed beef the main mooing offender driving livestock greenhouse gas emissions, with writer Annie Lowry declaring that trading your ribeyes and cheesesteaks for lentils and tofu is one of the best things you can do as a consumer for the environment. Is that right? Yet other activists have pointed out to a much smaller segment of the beef market as a possible answer to the conundrum of beef's carbon footprint. You see, pasture-raised beef, in which cattle are raised on grasslands from birth to slaughter, the cows are healthier, the grass is healthier. Grass-fed beef still commands a very small fraction of the overall beef market because it takes so much land. One 2017 estimate put it at just 4% of total U.S. beef sales. The relative scarcity of pastured beef, as well as its considerably heftier price tag, has kept it from gaining much of a foothold in the mammoth American meat economy, which in 2019 saw $111 billion in beef production. But there's a combination here. To raise them in feedlots and then turn them out to grass the last month, it cleans up the beef, and you still get the rapid production and keeps the price down. Still, growing interest in pasture beef, spurred on by explosion growth in farmers' markets around the country over the past decade, has led to a steady rise in the product's visibility, with major corporations and even fast food chains such as Arby's seeking to capitalize on the niche market. Grass-fed beef is good marketing. Alongside that growth has come a still small but steady series of investigations looking into the environmental outcomes of pastured cattle operations. In many cases, scientists have found that grass-fed beef farms can actually have a net carbon negative effect on the environmental emissions. Yep. One 2018 study by researchers in Michigan and Washington, D.C. applied life cycle analysis to two different beef finishing systems in the upper Midwest. A beef finishing system is like the last month of the beef cattle's life. One grass-fed and one feedlot finished. The scientists found that intensive rotational grazing was you periodically turn the cattle out to the grass fields. The scientists found that this rotational grazing has the potential to offset the greenhouse gas emissions through soil carbon sequestration, and therefore the finishing phase could be a net carbon sink. Grasses, the researchers noted, can be highly efficient carbon sequesters. That sequestration is a critical ecosystem service of grasslands, a natural phenomenon which can be maximized using best management practices for livestock grazing. And that is being employed a lot, especially out here in the East. Grasses are good for everybody. Another study published last December, let's see here. It reviewed a multi-species pasture rotation in the southeastern United States, that's here, that incorporated multiple species of livestock, including cattle. The authors of that study noted that feedlot beef are more efficient at gaining more weight in less time, thus producing less total greenhouse gas emissions over their lifespan. However, the sequestration effects of the multi-species pastured rotation ultimately reduced the greenhouse gas footprint of the pastured system by a whopping 80%, ultimately finishing at 66% lower than comparative feedlot production. Both studies noted a pointed downside to pastured systems. The pastured farm requires a lot of land to produce beef comparable to the more compact feedlot systems. Other researchers have come to different conclusions regarding the environmental feasibility of pastured beef. The 2017 study by the Food Climate Research Network argued that the potential offsets of worldwide grazing systems would only affect between 0.6 and 1.6% of yearly greenhouse gas emissions, to which, of course, livestock would substantially contribute. Still, other advocates have expressed considerably ambitious goals for pastured farming. The Savoy Institute, for instance, an ecological advocacy group that promotes what it calls holistic planned grazing, says the grazing method has the potential to remove the excess atmospheric carbon that has been the result of both anthropogenic soil loss over the past 10,000 years and industrial era greenhouse gas emissions. Regardless of the potential environmental benefits or the downsides, one thing that may pose an insurmountable deterrent for many consumers is the price. Beef is expensive. You want to go load up your cart with cuts of steak, you're going to end up spending a couple $100 a week. Average ground beef prices in the U.S. cities in March were about $4 a pound, while grass-fed ground beef runs $8 a pound. Beef prices across the industry spiked last year, due in part to the made-for-TV virus and the pure open attack by the global media, or the global syndicate on the middle class. Why? Because the middle class eats meat. The middle class fries burgers and grills steaks. That's why they went after it. Okay? That's why they went after it. All right. While I'm looking at what's going on in the chat room, let me go ahead and open up a chapter of the book, see what we can do. Which book we read out of? I'll tell you, we haven't read out of Volume 2 in a while. What do you say? Birth Volume 2. There's a really good chase scene in Birth Volume 2. It's where Katie and Donna get picked up by the FBI, and Kyle and Dick in the dual turbocharged Challenger go after them to recover them from the FBI. Let's see if I can find that. Let me do a search here. I'm going to search for, let's see. That what we do. Let's just put in FBI as a search term, and we'll find it. There we go. We found it. Okay. Well, that's a good chase scene too. What chapter is that? Yeah, okay. We'll read from chapter 7 in volume 2 in just a little bit. All right, I appreciate it very much. I want to talk about the hypochondriac nation. The Centers for Disease Control, our good buddies down there, they can never make up their mind. In fact, I covered an article that the CDC had put out about the dangers of wearing a mask, and YouTube kicked me off for 2 weeks. Yeah, I got a major strike on that. So I'm going to share this. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention revised its guidance on wearing the face diaper. And it advises that Americans who are fully vaccinated may now exercise and attend small outdoor gatherings without a mask. Now, you see, there's some contradictions here we need to be wary of, because if you're freshly vaccinated, you're going to be shedding a variant of the disease because your body is going to be fighting off the vaccine. That's not going to be fighting off COVID. That's not going to happen. In fact, a lot of people that have had COVID and whipped it already turned right around and got the vaccine, which I don't. Here's the deal. You got the COVID, you fought it off, your body's chock full of antibodies, you're immune. You're immune for life. The efficacy of the human immune system is about 98%, which means only 2% of the people that caught COVID and recovered from COVID can be reinfected by the same disease at some later date. 2%. If you've been vaccinated, you have a 94% efficacy. That means that 6% of the people that have been vaccinated will contract COVID-19. That's not bad, but it's not as good as the human immune system. So if you get the vaccine, what you're going to be doing is shedding the disease to unvaccinated people around you. Case in point, in one workplace, there happened to be 3 women who were pregnant at the same time. Obviously different mates, but you know what I'm saying. It just happened to be this workplace had 3 pregnant women at the same time. A person in that workspace got vaccinated. And what happened is of course, these women being pregnant, they did not get the vaccine. Smart. You don't want to take a vaccine while you're pregnant of any kind. But the person shed this new disease in the workplace, and all 3 women miscarried. Now, I got to tell you, I'm a statistician, and it's difficult enough to carry a baby to full term. All kinds of things have to go right. Now, I would say most of the time they do when you're young and you're healthy and you take care of yourself and don't smoke or drink or fall down or anything like that. Everybody's going to carry a baby to full term, pretty much. But for 3 women to miscarry in a very short time frame, like a week or 2, the odds are absolutely astronomical. It has to be the shedding of the person who got the vaccine in their area. So if you've been vaccinated, I want you to wear the mask, because I don't want you breathing that new disease among us. And if you go and look at your history of the 1918 Spanish flu, you know where that flu started. That flu started not in Spain. That flu started in Arkansas, because soldiers who were in Arkansas at basic training were vaccinated against the flu. We then took those soldiers and we shipped them all over the world. And wherever those soldiers went, that's where the disease broke out. Because those soldiers carried with them a new disease that had been injected into them, and they were all contagious. And everywhere they went, people caught the disease. In Poland, in Germany, in France. In fact, it could be said that World War I may have actually been won by the flu. By the flu, because so many people were dying in the trenches of the flu. And this was a horrible flu. Nobody had any defenses against it. You caught it, and within 24 hours, blood was coming out of your ears. 2 days later, you were dead. It was a terrible flu. And it was us. We made that flu in Arkansas, and we exported it as a vaccine. And now we're doing the same thing with this flu. Now, it's a little too late, actually very too late, argues Stanford University professor of medicine Jay Bhattacharya. The Public Health Agency's hypervigilant coronavirus response over the last 12 to 14 months has paved the way for what he calls the institutionalization of hypochondria among the American public. That this sort of order should have come long ago, he said during an interview on Just the News. He said, I think they're being entirely too cautious by saying, okay, only if you're vaccinated. People who have had the disease before are also immune. Why shouldn't they be allowed to not wear masks? People like me who had the disease over a year ago. There has been very little evidence of outdoor transmission of the disease to begin with, he said, co-author of the Great Barrington Declaration, a manifesto that urges the alternative COVID-19 strategy focused on protecting those at greater risk while minimizing disruption and damage to the larger society. But that is not what they wanted to do. What they wanted to do was smash the Trump economy. This statement has been signed by close to 14,000 medical and public health scientists. Okay, YouTube, you want to kick me off? I'm going with 14,000 medical and public health scientists. Not 40, not 100, 14,000. I'm not against the vaccine. I'm just saying I'm going to wait a year. Okay, you got 140, 160 million Americans that have been vaccinated. I'll wait. Let's see what happens to them first. Public health authorities, including the CDC, have generated an enormous amount of fear and panic around this made-for-TV virus. Yesterday, or I should say a couple days ago, Virtual Joe, who has been fully vaccinated for many months, wore a mask outside as he walked to the podium to address the press regarding the CDC's newest guidance. And last week, Virtual Joe wore a mask during a virtual climate summit with other world leaders, calling masks a palpable symbol of panic and fear. This doctor said Virtual Joe's use of a mask in public, even though he's been vaccinated and is immune, sends the entirely wrong signal about the efficacy of vaccination and a whole host of other things. We basically have said, look at this disease avoidance as the central problem in your life, no matter who you are. It's not taking care of your kids. It's not practicing your faith. It's not doing as well as you can do in your own profession. None of that is as important as avoiding this disease. And I think it's going to be very difficult to undo that. People are going crazy. Kids are being hurt, okay? They're being hurt by this. Quick break for TFR. All right, we'll send them up for 3 minutes. Fascism at its best. Newly released documents suggest that one of the country's most powerful teachers' unions shaped Virtual Joe's policies on the reopening of schools. Yep. The documents obtained by the conservative group Americans for Public Trust through a Freedom of Information Act request reported yesterday. They show the American Federation of Teachers lobbying the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, and succeeding in having some of their recommendations adopted. The teachers' unions had long opposed a rapid reopening of the schools because they were partying down. The powerful teachers' unions' full court press preceded the federal agency putting the brakes on a full reopening of in-person classrooms. Documents show a flurry of activity between CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky, her top advisors, and the union officials, with Virtual Joe's brass being looped in at the White House in the days before the highly anticipated February 12th announcement on school reopening guidelines. Virtual Joe campaigned against President Donald Trump by claiming that he would follow the science on the coronavirus pandemic, implying that the Trump administration had not done so. When he announced the administration's policy on school reopenings on February 12th, Virtual Joe said he would follow the science and claimed that the CDC has provided the best available scientific evidence on how to reopen schools safely, and it was all written by the teachers' unions. How about that? How about that? Why the teachers' unions? Why? Because amid complaints from parents that their children are being indoctrinated, a Missouri school district official is advising English teachers to create a fake curriculum and keep the real one hidden from parents. The real one is focused on anti-racist activism and issues of white privilege. The author of the memo is Natalie Follert. The literacy speech... Let's make sure we don't go over time here. The literacy speech coordinator for grades 6 to 12 in the Rockford School District. She told middle and high school English teachers in the district that parents had been complaining that we are pushing an agenda. We're pushing critical race theory. We're making white kids feel bad about their privilege. We're stereotyping. We're teaching kids to be social activists. And we're teaching kids to be democratic thinkers and activists. Well, the controversial curriculum included Intersectionality 101, a video produced by the Southern Poverty Law Center, a handout for fifth graders, teachers Michael Brown was murdered just steps from his mother's home in Ferguson, Missouri, and it says disruption is the new world order. It's the way in which those who are denied power gain access to power. And the complaints have come, absolutely. And so now they're being urged, don't make everything visible on canvas. This is not being deceitful. This is doing what you have done for years. Prior to the pandemic, you didn't send everything home or have it available. You taught in your classroom and things were peachy keen. We are going old school. You could duplicate the entry lesson in Canvas. Publish one for the whole class that is lean version of the lesson. The original that has all the stuff on it can be published and only assigned to specific students, or you could specifically email those students a copy of what they need. Make a copy and don't tell the parents everything. Okay, let's bring TFR back in. Okay, everybody's live with me now. Let's go ahead and read a little bit from Chapter 7 of Volume 2 of the Birth series, which is called the Grand Division. Street racing in Southern California was a billion-dollar pastime for more than 60 years. It was not quite like the breed of racers that developed in the South. Driving faster than law enforcement in the 40s and 50s was a necessity because alcohol had been outlawed by constitutional amendment. It didn't mean people quit drinking. It just meant that selling it had become an artful process of knowing who to bribe and who to outrun. If the police cars got 4-barrel carburetors, the bootleggers got superchargers. If they radioed ahead to a roadblock, then the drivers used scanners and back roads to escape. The drivers got faster and faster until most of them removed their genes from the pool of the living. The ones who could drive on the ragged edge, where rubber's not supposed to be able to hold asphalt. made a different transition. Fortunately, by the time the police began using aircraft to follow gearheads, the whole phenomenon developed into a multi-billion-dollar legal venture on racetracks from coast to coast. The obsession with crossing the finish line first was summed up best by 2011 NASCAR points leader Jeff Gordon, when he was asked how he felt about being first place in the point standing when second place was the best he had finished so far that year. "Nobody gives a damn about second place," he said in an ESPN interview. A short while later, Dale Earnhardt was killed after his car slammed into a wall of one of the fastest ovals in the country. In order to participate in the professional racing industry, all your good parts have to be in good working order, just like the car. Richard Daring lost his right eye in an epic go-kart crash into a high wall when a younger driver got too close to his left front wheel. That forced his driving career to take a left-hand turn back onto the public streets to do what he did best. Society did what it could to protect the public from fast-driving cars. They posted speed limits, assigned penalties for disobeying those limits, and equipped police to enforce those limits. The fines were often accompanied by the revocation of the license to drive, a thorough spanking by the insurance companies, and a social stigma as a reckless driver. It did nothing to stop the birth of another billion-dollar industry of modifying cars made by Japan, Germany, Britain, and America into asphalt-eating shadow chasers. Richard Daring, alias Dick Daring, alias Daring Dick, was one of the fastest and most successful street racers in the country. That is, until he made an epic run from the Pasadena City Police, the California Highway Patrol, and the FBI, running at the highest speed ever recorded on Interstate 210. It took a presidential pardon to get him out of that one. Now, one might think that there was not much in the way of gainful employment for a pardoned, one-eyed street racer, but not so in the virtual economy. His best friend and social dependent was a hacker and amateur chemist named Kyle Kramer. The two of them were an integral part of the hottest online street racer gambling site in the world. In an alternative, safer, and far more lucrative venture, they created one of the most challenging and popular street racing games ever offered. It didn't hurt to have a pre-approved Small Business Administration loan to get the graphics to back up the action. No one ever revealed how that loan came pre-approved, but it had been paid back in the first month of sales. Kramer also acted as a quality engineer for JPL on loan. President Riker's new task force was made of people all over the private high-tech world. This meant bending the rules for security clearances and sometimes letting people come to work in shorts and a t-shirt. The market even noticed a slight tick upward in energy drink stocks as the volume of completely new software necessary to accommodate Rhino's data required thousands of man-hours each week to implement into new space and Earth-based platforms. Now that the world knew about the union of the polarity, the population needed to know when the two Earths were going to come apart, and they needed to know where the worst of the cataclysms might occur. The programs had to provide early warning to save as much of the human race as possible. One thing was painfully clear. The trillions spent in black budget projects like building underground bases, road systems, and power storage systems were utterly wasted. Everything underground was going to be destroyed as the two matter fields strained against planetary inertia. You might as well get in there now and beat the rush, the bloggers would say. The elites can lock the doors and we'll take it from here. I hate driving the speed limit, said Dick, as his dual turbocharged Dodge Challenger pulled under the automatic roll-up door of his Pasadena speed shop. Hey, look at it this way. At least you're not on America's Most Wanted, said Kyle from the passenger seat as he folded his new laptop closed. For the record, I was never even on the list of future episodes, said Dick. No thanks to a friend in the White House, quipped Kyle. They should have gifted me that jet, you know. Oh, we redlined that sled, did we not? Laughed Kyle. What a ride, said Dick as he fist-bumped Kyle. Oh, yeah, I almost forgot. I have to go to Oak Ridge in 2 weeks. I hate flying. So, would you drive me? Asked Kyle. Tennessee? What's out there? The nuclear stuff. I mean, the lab there wants to know how to magnetize a gas, you know? Hey, buddy, we're brothers, right? Right on, said Kyle. Well, I would love to cruise some southern, but you have to be pure with me, bro. What did they ask you to do? Inquired Dick. Tritium. They want me to magnetize tritium. It's a gas, like I said. Dude, that's a radioactive gas, said Dick with a slight elevation in his tone. Only for 12.3 years. Well, half of it anyway. Tell me you're not helping them make a bomb, said Dick while looking into Kramer's black-rimmed glasses. They said it was a power supply. You know, like a fusion cell for electric power, said Kyle. Well, you're the expert. But aren't hydrogen bombs enriched with tritium? Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's how they tune the explosion. The assembly enriches the chain reaction a few billionths of a second after the initial compression detonation. It adds like bazillions of neutrons to the reaction and makes it go much faster. It can jack the yield from 10 kilotons to 150 kilotons depending on what they want. You know, like smart nukes, said Kyle with an uncomfortable zeal in his voice. And why would you want to help those goons? Asked Dick. It's about clean energy, bro. If I can show them how to magnetize the gaseous tritium, they can make steam and turn the turbines without the risk of the contamination that we face with cesium or recycled plutonium piles. Remember Fukushima? Man, half the ocean died, said Kyle. Who can forget that abortion? They have so many of those things built on top of fault lines. It's like having a .22 automatic go off in your pocket with a full clip, responded Dick. Who in the hell plans this stuff? I mean, I'm all about cheap real estate, but why build every reactor with a tectonic fault line in the basement? That's what I know. If they could stop using that hardcore stuff and use tritium gas instead, they could turn it on and off without lead rods. It would be like zero nuclear waste. See what I'm saying? Asked Kyle. Okay, let's plot a course for Knoxville, Tennessee. But you have to promise me that at the first sign of weapons, you clam up. You got it? Said Dick. I'm there with you, said Kyle. Should be 40 all the way. Easy enough, right? Said Dick. And it takes a whole day to drive across Texas, said Kyle. Not at the speed of a Dodge, said Dick. Oh, yeah. I heard they have a section with no speed limit, said Kyle. Oh, I think we can find the limit or push it around the block, laughed Dick. You know they drive pretty fast there in Tennessee, said Dick, trying to lighten the mood a little bit. Don't I know it? NASCAR, legend cars. It has potential, said Kyle. Well, we promise not to get any ideas, right? Speaking of that, what does Riker say about this little assignment of yours? Dick asked. He said to take it on, but if I see something, holler, said Kyle. Aw, that is bullshit, dude. They're using you to narc on their own. This is harsh, said Dick. I can't be controlled. You know that, right? I mean, even when they hooked me up and tried to get inside my brain, their machine nearly sneezed a belt. I'm a sovereign soul, said Kyle with a serious tone to his voice. That's not what worries me. They may know everything except for a little tiny piece that makes it work, or work much better. It's a game of fractions, you know, like our game. It's more than reaction time here. We're past the fear of speed, but there's always the fear of death. You hear me? Said Dick. I hear you, bro. I hear you. But we don't have much time. And if I can figure out a way to keep the lights on without blowing everybody up or killing the oceans of the sky, I think we should try to help, said Kyle. Dick grabbed Kyle around the shoulder with his right arm and put his left hand on Kyle's chest. You're a blazing soul, my man, said Dick. Just stick with me until it's over, he said. I'm Siamese, dude, said Kyle with a smile that did not reveal his teeth. Yeah? Well, I'm Pavlovian, said Dick, pushing Kyle away like a big brother toward the batter's box. I definitely could imbibe, said Kyle. In and out? Asked Dick. With the chocolate shake, said Kyle. With that, they headed out the front door of the white block building with the blue Daring Speed Shop sign overhead. Pasadena was a small town grafted onto a big city, and it was easy to walk 2 blocks to the In-N-Out Burger restaurant and eat on the outside picnic tables. Even in the early afternoon, there were a few cars flaunting the EPA's Clean Air Act with obscene amounts of horsepower, cruising the boulevard with no particular place to go. That's a pretty good chapter. I like that chapter. It's fun. You like that chapter? That's just hanging out in Pasadena. It gives you an idea of the relationship between Kyle Kramer and Richard Daring. Gets you into a little bit of their lives. I really appreciate that chapter. What is that, CC? Hey, Brooks, wanted to ask you a question when you get a chance about how you corrected your eyesight vision through meditation. Can you elaborate on what exactly you did, please? Nothing. I did nothing. I'm telling you. When I went to James Gilliland's place on, I think it was August 15th, 2006, I had been wearing glasses since I was like 15. I had asthma and I weighed 245 pounds. I was just an average fat middle-aged guy. And I was going to speak on Sunday, so I went there on Friday, and I stayed Friday and Saturday night on the 17th. We were reintroduced to meditation that afternoon, decided to try it in earnest with some other people that night. And during that event, I was connected to Mount Adams by this, I don't know, like it felt like a dryer hose, a long dryer hose. I swear, I had my eyes closed, but that's what it felt like to me. And these pressure pulsations were coming against me. Not rapid, but faster than a heartbeat. And I could hear singing coming down the tube, not with my ears, but, kind of with my body. And it was like angels singing. And after a while, I figured out what they were singing. They were singing the words peace, love, and joy over and over again, really like angelic, all kinds of harmonies in it. And then that went silent, and then this voice came down the tube. It was a higher-pitched male voice, but I could determine it was male. And it said, because you are quick to forgive, you are forgiven. And at that, the tube disconnected from me, and it was like a decompression that snapped me out of the meditation. And, I had some conversation with the people around me. They said they saw gold plates and tablets and everything going into my back. And I recorded or relayed to them exactly what I did to you. And I went to bed that night, woke up the next morning, and I did not need to put my glasses on. And I have not had an asthma attack ever since. And by the way, it was about a month later, I was fed something, some hot sauce with some Chinese food, and I had an allergic reaction to it. I broke out in like hives on my hands and arms. And so I went to the doctor to get a Benadryl shot. So I walked in, and of course she could see the hives on me, so she got the shot ready. And she took my weight, and she said, wow. I said, wow, what? She said, you've lost 23 pounds since the last time you weighed. And it was true. I had lost 23 pounds. And I got the shot, and of course the allergic reaction went away. And I also noticed that I did not have to wear my glasses at work. I don't wear my glasses to do this program. I wear readers during the day. If I look at a computer screen all day long, I'll put on these readers so I don't strain my eyes. But I could never read this ever before. Just wasn't going to happen. So now I'm 66 years old, and I still don't have to wear glasses. It's not on my license. I'm not required to wear glasses. I can see perfectly well. Now, I've put a little bit of that weight back on because I'm not as active as I used to be. And I'm beginning to change my eating habits. By the way, a real good diet idea that somebody at work gave me. Metamucil and orange Gatorade or Gatorade in the morning instead of breakfast. I'm a big breakfast eater. I eat like, some kind of biscuit or some kind of eggs or cereal or something for breakfast every day for a long time. And I could never figure out why I couldn't lose weight. Well, I've been doing that diet for 4 days. I did it 5 days, Monday through Friday. And I lost 2 pounds. That's pretty good. If I can lose 2 pounds this next week, I'm going to endorse this diet. So 2 pounds a week is about 10 pounds a month. I'm happy with 10 pounds a month because I only have to lose 15 pounds anyway, and everything in my closet will fit me. So just a thought. I just wanted to share that with you. The cancel culture is catching up with, oh my gosh, all kinds of things. Glenn Danzig, this is an article in Breitbart. Glenn Danzig, who founded the rock band Misfits, said his band and the punk explosion, it couldn't happen today because of cancel culture and woke bullshit, he says. The rocker added, you won't have any of those kinds of bands ever again because everyone's so uptight and politically correct. When asked about the meaning behind the Misfits song, The Last Caress, Danzig told Rolling Stone, it's just a crazy-ass song. We would do things just to piss people off. The lyrics to Last Caress read in part, I got something to say. I killed your baby today, and it doesn't matter much to me as long as it's dead. Well, I got something to say. I raped your mother today, and it doesn't matter much to me as long as she's whatever. Anyway, it was something else, Danzig said. I don't think people will ever see anything like it again. There won't be any new bands coming out like that. Now they will just immediately get canceled. They won't get any exposure. When asked to explain what he meant by that, Danzig said, people don't understand because everything's so cancel culture, woke bullshit nowadays. You could never have the punk explosion nowadays because of cancel culture and the woke bullshit. You could never have it. It wouldn't never have happened. We're lucky it happened when it did because it will never happen again. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Oh, by the way, Sex Pistols frontman John Lydon, also known as Johnny Rotten, recently called wokeness a divisive political weapon being wielded by privileged, tempestuous, spoilt children, whom the media offer a platform to push their unpopular political correct opinions. Wokeness, Rotten said, is a device used by the privileged to keep the working class in their place. And he's right. Last October, Rotten confirmed that he was definitely voting for President Donald Trump in America's November 2020 presidential selection. That's interesting, isn't it? I do write a lot about North Korea. In the book Charm of Favor, there's a North Korean bomb that goes off. It's built by North Korea, but it's put together by a Pakistani, and he's been hanging out, sleeping in a sleeper cell in Mexico City, and he makes his way up to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and he builds this bomb, which is of North Korean design, and it's set off by North Korean satellites. Well, North Korea today warned little Joe, or Virtual Joe, that he's going to face a very grave situation because he's made a very big blunder in his recent speech by calling the North a security threat and revealing his intent to maintain a hostile policy against it. Well, last week, Virtual Joe, in his first address to Congress, called North Korea and Iran's nuclear program serious threats to American and world security, and said he'll work with allies to address those problems through diplomacy and stern deterrence. Stern deterrence, did you say? My goodness. Well, his statement clearly reflects his intent to keep enforcing the hostile policy toward the Norks, as has been done by the U.S. for over half a century. Well, they don't like it. It is certain that the U.S. chief executive made a big blunder in light of the present-day viewpoint. Now that the keynote of the U.S. new Nork policy has become clear, we will be compelled to press for corresponding measures. And with time, the U.S. will find itself in a very grave situation. Better read Charm a favor before it's too late, my friends. The White House said Friday, administration officials had completed a review of the U.S. policy toward North Korea, saying Virtual Joe plans to veer from the approaches of his two recent predecessors as he tries to stop North Korea's nuclear program. Press Secretary Jen Psaki did not detail findings of the review, but suggested the administration would seek a middle ground between Donald Trump's grand bargain and Barack Obama's strategic patience approaches. After a series of high-profile nuclear and missile tests in 2016 and 17, North Korean leader Little Kim launched summit diplomacy with Trump on the future of his growing nuclear arsenal. But that diplomacy remained stalled for about 2 years over differences in how much sanctions relief North Korea could win in return for limited denuclearization steps. You have to fully denuclearize in order to get those, okay? If Pyongyang agrees to working-level talks, the starting point of negotiations would be a freeze point of North Korean testing and development of nuclear capabilities and delivery systems. Well, we shall see how that comes out. We shall see. I don't think Virtual Joe is really commanding any confidence out there around the world. But you can have confidence by coming here to America Free Radio. Every single Wednesday and Sunday at 8 p.m., we are live. We stream on video, and we stream on the Truth Frequency Radio Network on Sunday and Revolution Radio Network on Wednesdays. And we'll be here for you. You can always communicate with me at Agnew at x2-radio.com. Hopefully we'll have our servers back up so that email address will work. But remember that everything you do will eventually affect the universe. So do it on purpose. And don't forget, next Saturday at noon, we have our webinars. So go to my website, brooksagnew.blog, click on the webinars link, and sign up for the class. Now, this is America Free Radio, and I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, saying peace, Earth Explorers. Now go out and look for the good in others and help it to grow a little every day. And before long, you will have saved the planet. Now go and do. And have a productive week. The weather is going to be amazing this week. Everything's looking up. Trust the cyber ninjas out there in Arizona. And watch your P's and Q's. Don't spend all your money. Be mobile. Fill up the cigar box at home. You know what I'm talking about. And we'll see you Wednesday night at 8 o'clock right here on America Free Radio.